Welcome to the Wellness Connection podcast with Fiona Kane. I'm your host, Fiona Kane. And today I'm going to be talking to you about a strategy that I learned from Elizabeth Gilbert, who is an author. And a few years ago, she wrote about this. I think I first saw it on her social media. And then she later wrote it in her book. I think the book was called, just checking, I think it might have been, Big Magic was the book. So she had a book called Big Magic. And this is a strategy that she uses. And she essentially calls it making friends with fear. I refer to it as a road trip, and you'll get why in a moment when I explain it to you. But essentially, when we're embarking on something new that we have some fear around, uh, we have those voices in our head, those voices in our head that say, "What are you doing this for? You can't do this. You might fail." Whatever it is that the voices are saying. When we embark on anything that we're doing, where we have this fear come up, it's about managing that fear. It's about managing those voices. You would have seen it in. I'm always talking about music. I know you'll have to get used to it if you don't like that. Sorry, but that's what I do. But Ren, Hi Ren. So Ren's song Hi Ren, which I talked about in an episode sort of way back. He was he was doing that sort of to and fro between the different parts of himself in his video. So it was sort of good side, bad side, dark light, the side that's sort of healing and trying to overcome and do well, and the side that is sort of saying, "Who do you think you are? You can't do that." That kind of thing, right? And essentially, there's fear behind that. Whatever that side is, there's often a fear base to it, or whatever's going on with that side anyway. It's generally not helpful. So anyway, getting back to Elizabeth Gilbert, she wrote this sort of great thing around fear and what she does. And she does this in regards to writing, because she says that when she embarks on, writing a new book, she sort of starts to get the voices come up in her head. Who do you think you are? Why do you think you can do this? What makes you special? Blah, 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 whatever it is, right? So that's her version of it. But this could be around most things in life, I think, really, when we have fear around doing something and we've got those voices in our head trying to tell us that we can't do it, or we're not good enough, or whatever it is. So she refers to it as making friends with fear, and it's the road trip. And what she does is she sort of says, okay, so this new project that she's doing, she calls it the road trip. We're going on a trip, right? So when I say we, I'm referring to just all the parts of you, because we've got all different parts of us. We've got the inner child, and the kind of the more authority figure, and maybe the one that comes in and says, "Who do you think you are?" All the different parts, right? So we just got parts of ourselves, and they all play a role. And some people hear them more than others, and it's more of an issue. But essentially, they play a role, and it's understanding how to manage those parts. I'm not talking about severe mental illness with different parts. That's a whole different story, and that's obviously people have to get help for that. But I am talking about, and I don't mean to make fun of that either. That's not my point. But what I'm talking about is the average person, and just all the different parts we have going on in our mind, all the different voices we've got going on in our mind, because we all have a different version of that. So that's what I'm referring to here. So in regards to that, she says, so she talks about it like she's planning a road trip and they're all going together. But she's very clear, and I'm going to be reading the words here, because she said she came up with this long ago, helped her get rid of her fear around things. Well, not really get rid of it, but manage her fear. Because people sort of say things like, get rid of your fear. You can't really get rid of your fear. I think the saying, I'm not quite sure who said it, but the feel the fear and do it anyway is probably more apt. Like, you're going to feel it, but do it anyway. Um, if it's something sensible, not if it's something silly. But anyway, what she said is, uh, when she's going into this fear and when she's going to plan on this trip, she says so she's talking to her part, she's calling it fear. So this part of you, whatever you call it. But what she says to fear is that, okay, we're going on a trip, and of course you can come. You can be on the trip. And yes, I will hear you. So, you listen to all the parts, and yes, I will hear you. I will listen to you. So having a respect for fear, because fear is often, fear can be the thing that it can be useful as well. Of course, it might be the thing that sort of tells you that intuition that, oh, maybe you do have to be fearful in this moment. Maybe there's something to be concerned about. It's, fear has its place. So it's not about never having fear, because if you're fearless, then you do really, really, really silly things, right? So fear does have its place. So it's about respecting that it has its place and being respectful of it, but also putting it in its place. So what she says is, yep, we're going on this trip. You can come too. I'm happy to listen to you. However, you're sitting in the back seat. And she sort of says, okay, you sit in the back seat. You're not going to control the songs on the radio or the whatever device people use these days, but you're not controlling the music. You're not controlling the navigation. You're not even going to select the snacks. Not allowed to select, not allowed to suggest detours, none of that. So it's welcome in the van or the car, and it can be there, but it's not going to, you're not going to plan everything around it. It's just going to be along for the journey. And then what happens is, and she says here, I do not exile any of the parts of myself along the creative journey. Okay, so you're not exiling any part of yourself, you're not disrespecting any part of yourself, but you pop fear in the back seat. Fear is not controlling the car, and then you just get on with the journey, right? So it's not about cutting the parts of us that are there to have a protective mechanism or whatever it is. It's not about cutting them out. It actually just is about having a respect for what their place is and what their place isn't. So and another way, a similar topic, a similar thing is. I was talking to one of my clients recently, and what we were talking about is, you know, when we have different parts of ourselves take over. So when we go into fear, one of the things that can happen is the child takes over. So we go into fear and the defiant child comes out, and the defiant child says, oh, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to, and I'm just going to sit here and eat chocolate, and whatever the defiant child says they're going to do. Right. And that the defiant child is there usually due to fear. There's some sort of fear, and the defiant child has come out. And I won't say usually, I'll say often, because I can't cover everything. Obviously, I'm just having general discussions about this stuff. But when that is the case, there's some fear around something. And when there's some fear around something, that's when you kind of make friends with your fear and you say, okay, I know you're here. That's fine. Jump in the back seat, we need to go. But you don't let the child drive the car. You don't let the fear drive the car. The person who drives the car is the adult in the room. So it's kind of with all of the different things that go on for us and all of the different mindsets and the different struggles that we have in our mind. It's having an awareness around who's driving the car and who's not driving the car. So you can include the different parts of yourself, the different fears and whatever else it is. But that's not, the child's not driving the car, the fear's not driving the car. You're in charge, you're on the driver's seat. So in life, I think it's a lot about ensuring that you stay in the driver's seat, but also not being so rigid, harking back to, I was talking about Ren's spoken word thing after Hi Ren, which I've talked about a few times now, because I think I will talk about it several more times because there's so much in it. But in that, he's talking about, being soft versus being rigid, and I think that softening it was where you say, yes, we can all be in the car together. However, I'm going to be in the driver's seat. Whereas rigidity is we can't share, or have to pretend I'm not fearful or whatever it is. So it's about sort of embracing what is actually there. There's fear there, whatever's going on, but you can embrace a fear, but it doesn't drive. So I think it's just about, if you understand, because I think that sometimes what happens is when we go into the fear or have these different parts arise in ourselves, we don't have the tools, or we don't know how to find our way out of it. And one way of finding your way out of it is actually just understanding that it is just a part of you and it plays a role, embracing it, but you can embrace it without putting it in the driver's seat, the same as you would for your child. You embrace your child, care for your child, look after your child, listen to your child, but you don't stick them in the driver's seat. Well, at least not till they're an age that the age where they're supposed to be in the driver's seat. You know what I'm trying to say. So anyway, I just thought that was really useful. It's basically making friends with fear. It's the road trip. And it's essentially that conversation you have with yourself when you're embarking on something new or different, or when you feel the fear coming up. So yeah, You can come, Fee, you can come with me, but you're not driving, not controlling the radio, not controlling the nav man or whatever device you use to find where you're going. You're not suggesting any changes to which way we're going, and you're not even getting the snacks, but you'll be there, and we love you, we embrace you, but not driving. Okay, so I thought that was a really, really useful strategy. The other thing that I wanted to bring up today and I just checked my notes because that was it. Yeah. So one of the things, and actually, I'll just finish up in talking about fear. I'm just going to talk about one other aspect too, and then I'll just tell you about this other thing that I saw the other day. So the other thing in regards to fear is, if I can get my brain, yeah, right, is something I actually talked about in a recent episode that I recorded with Daniel Monday, personal trainer. So you pop back, I think it might be the one before this episode, and see that. But we were talking about this, and we were talking about how we have a fear of failure. And we were talking about how it's really, really interesting that we don't have it, like, so babies don't have it, right? So, and I have discussed this before in different ways, but I think it's sort of just worth bringing up again. Is, we're human beings. We are born. We're not born with a neural pathway that allows us to walk. A giraffe is, and I think dogs, and I know most. I think animals are, because most of them don't have time where they can't be walking. So, for the most part, a lot of animals are born already with a neural pathway in their brain that allows them to walk. Human beings are not. So we're born. With the propensity to learn how to do it, but we can't do it yet. And essentially, everything that baby does, from sort of when it first has enough strength in its neck to even hold its own head up, to like when it starts literally lifting its head up, and then the baby starts kind of maybe roll, like they put them on their tummy and they roll over, or they put them on they roll and move, and they move their arms and legs, and all of the different actions they do allow the neural pathways to develop in their brain to allow them to learn how to walk. And I've talked about those pathways before, and creating pathways to habits and things. Same thing. We need to create the neural pathway into that habit so that it becomes a natural thing for us. But what we do, so with babies, if you've ever watched a baby from when they're born to learning how to walk, there's a lot in between that, right? There's lots of stages. And the amount of times, if you counted how many times they got up and fell down, stumbled and fell and all the rest of it, thousands and thousands of times, I would imagine, right? And what we don't do with babies, we don't say, "Oh, you're going to fall over. Let's just sit you down. We don't want that to happen." You don't do that, because you know that it's actually really, really healthy for that baby to fall over 1,000 times, as long as it's safe where it's falling over. But it's really, really healthy. That baby's supposed to fall over 1,000 times. That's how it's building its neural pathways, and that's how it gets success. It gets success because it falls over 1,000,000 times, and so we understand that concept. Like, babies understand the concept. They're not worried. They're not worried about, oh, what if I fall over? It would be really embarrassing, and no one's going to talk to me, and I might fail anyway, so maybe I shouldn't do it. So baby's not concerned about it, and us as adults are not concerned about it with the baby, or we shouldn't be anyway, as long as the baby's in a safe space to fall over, right? But as we get older, somewhere along the way, there's a time where suddenly it becomes really a lot of fear base around failing, and it's like you can't afford to fail, and what if someone sees you fail, or what if you don't make it, or whatever, um, you know, and it really impedes our progress, because you literally need to be able to fail so you can succeed. And you only have to read any autobiography to find out that none of the people who've succeeded have not failed in anything. They have failed, and a lot of them have failed many, many times. And as I said in another episode, I think WD-40 was because it took 40 times to get the recipe right. So I think it could have been WD-45, WD-37, whatever. It was just how many times. So they had to do it 39 times wrong before they did the 40th time they got it right. Okay, so that goes for many, 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 many things, probably all things, right? Nothing is ever right the first time. Great singers were not born singing beautifully. Even if you have a talent for it, they had to learn to be a great singer, great guitarist, great whatever. Okay, so whatever we do, golfer, football, whatever, you learn to, you might have a talent, but you get good at it by being prepared to be bad at it a lot for a really, really, really long time. And then in time, you get good at it, right? So that's just a reminder for everyone that we do let our fears get in the way sometimes, and we do need to embrace our fears more, but also put them in the, embrace them, understand they're there for a reason, let them in the car, in the back seat, and but still be allowed to and prepared to fail as many times as you need to have that success, right? So I think it's a really, really important message sort of in life and in health and in lots of things. So so I thought that was just really, really useful, a really, really useful strategy. So the other thing I did want to talk to you about today, and it was something that I saw on a video the other day on a podcast. So I recently read a book by Konstantin Kisin, and he is in a podcast called Trigonometry. I listen to all different podcasts and political, this, that, and everything. And this particular podcast, what he was referring to, sorry, I can't remember which episode it was. I listened to so many, but it was a recent episode. And this is more on the topic that I was talking about a few weeks ago, where I was actually talking about you see what you look for. So that's that thing that it's really a lot of the themes of what I talk about on this podcast are about how much your narrative, how much a story, how much what you believe uh, controls what you see. You seeing what you're looking for, and what he said in this podcast, he was actually referring to some sort of study that was done. And I don't have the details of the study, so I'm just referring to what Constantine said. But he said that there was a study done where there was a group of women. It probably wasn't a large study, I wouldn't imagine, for something like this, but there was a group of women that were given so the study was, we're going to draw, we're using makeup to draw scars on their faces, right, to make them look scarred. And then they were going to go for job interviews. And the idea was that they were supposed to assess whether or not, it was whether or not people discriminated against people who had scars, right? So they were looking for, is there discrimination against people who look that way? And so they were telling the women that that's what we're looking for. We're looking to see if there's discrimination. We're going to put this scar on you, go to the job interview, and you come back and tell us if you feel like they discriminated against you or not. So they drew all these scars on these women's faces, and so the women sort of saw all these scars. And then when they were about to go for the interview, just before they left the room, they would say, hey, look, we've just got to touch it up. And when they touched it up, they actually removed the scar, so that it went back to their normal face. But the women didn't know this, because the women weren't in front of the mirror at this point in time. So the women went into the interview believing they had a terrible scar on their face. And they reported that there was discrimination. They reported there was all these different things where they referred to, oh, the person said this or the person said that, and they saw all of it as being related to the fact that they had this scar on their face, right? So they actually went in there believing that people would probably be discriminatory towards them because of their scars, and they came out with absolute confirmation of it, except they didn't have the scars. So it is really, really powerful what you believe to be true. And we do seek that sort of confirmation bias, or that confirmation of what we believe to be true. So we do go around and sort of, if we think people are out to get us, or if we think people are discriminating against us and all of that, we see it everywhere. Now, I'm not saying discrimination never happens or any of those things don't happen. Of course they do. We are humans and it's a flawed world. However, the amount that actually happens and the amount that we believe happens, I think, are two different things. And and there's that sort of whole where you focus your energy and what you believe to be true and what you see and what you keep putting out into the world is kind of what keeps coming back to you. And if what you put out to the world is the world's inherently a terrible place and people are mean and terrible and out to get me and they're discriminating against me and they don't like me for whatever the feature is or the thing is, you will see confirmation of that over and over and over again. And if you believe that, inherently Most people mean well. Most people are well intentioned, because I do believe that. I know there's bad people, but most people are well intentioned, and that whatever it is going on for you is not going to get in the way, and people aren't going to discriminate. Largely, that's what you'll experience. I'm not saying there's no change on the edges. There's none of it happening. Of course, there is. So this is not me saying that people aren't discriminated against, and that terrible things don't happen. Absolutely, they do. However, what you believe about it has a really big impact on it, and has a really big impact maybe on how often that experience happens for you. And if you believe that the person was intentionally out to get you, or if the person was just having a bad day, they're very different ways of looking at the world. And so you will see, again, you will see confirmation over and over. If you're looking for beauty, you'll see confirmation of that most of the time. And if you're looking for bad stuff, you'll see confirmation of that most of the time. And the truth is, it is all there. There's all parts of it. So it's not about pretending it's all great and it's all wonderful and there's sunshine, roses, and unicorns. It's also, though, not sort of saying it's all dark, bad, and terrible, because neither of those things are true. Both are true, and there's a balance. However, we tend to see and we tend to find what we really believe is there. So I just thought that was a really powerful study, and there's been so many different studies over the years, and that show that what we believe is really, really powerful. Even when you look at drug studies, when they do like placebos and things like that, if we believe something to be true, it becomes true for us. So just be really, really aware of what you believe to be true, because what you believe to be true, your stories, your narrative, really does paint the picture of your life. And I'm not saying that everything that happens to people is their own fault. I'm not saying that at all. A lot of life happens to us, but your journey along the way, how you respond to it, and how you manage it overall, a lot of difference can be made with the way we approach it, is all I'm trying to say. All right. So anyway, I think I might leave it there. I think my voice is going now anyway. But yeah, all I like to do here is share with you different concepts I've heard, different concepts I've learned, what I've experienced with clients, what I've experienced myself. I don't pretend to know it all or have all the right answers or be right about everything either. Like I say, this is just a conversation, but I hope that you benefit, you've learned something from it, and I'm always happy to hear your views as well. So thanks for tuning in today, whether you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, or you're listening on any of the podcast platforms. And please, please, please like, subscribe, share, all of the things. It is really, really important for me to have people find out about my show. So it makes a big difference for a small business. I know when you get out there and people hear more about what you're saying and what you're doing. And if you feel like there's value in it, please do share, because other people might find value in it as well. Anyway, thank you so much. I hope you have a great week. Talk to you next week. Thanks. Bye.